Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into a really important topic, the U.S. national debt. You might have heard people talking about it on the news or at home, but what does it really mean? Why is it so high, and what can we do about it? We're going to break it down in a way that's super easy to understand, so stick around. And don't forget, if you enjoy our content, hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more awesome content. Number 1, what is national debt? So, first things first, what is national debt? Imagine you want to buy a really cool bike, but you don't have enough money saved up. You might borrow money from your parents or friends to buy it now and promise to pay them back later. The national debt is kind of like that, but instead of a bike, it's about the government borrowing money to pay for things like schools, roads, hospitals, and even military equipment. When the government spends more money than it collects from taxes, it has to borrow money to cover the difference, creating what we call national debt. Number 2, why does the U.S. borrow money? You might wonder why the U.S. government needs to borrow money in the first place. Well, running a country is expensive. There are so many things the government needs to pay for, like defense to protect the country, education to help people learn, healthcare to keep everyone healthy, and social security to support elderly and disabled people. Sometimes the money the government collects from taxes isn't enough to cover all these expenses. This happens because unexpected things like natural disasters, wars, or economic downturns can suddenly increase costs. To make sure the country runs smoothly and everyone gets the services they need, the government borrows money. Number 3, how does the U.S. borrow money? Now you might be curious about how the U.S. borrows money. The government borrows money by selling something called bonds. A bond is like an IOU. When people, banks, or other countries buy these bonds, they are lending money to the U.S. government. In return, the government promises to pay them back with a little bit of extra money called interest. These bonds are safe investments because they are backed by the government's promise to pay, making them attractive to investors all over the world. The government issues different types of bonds, like treasury bills, notes, and bonds, depending on how long it will take to pay them back. Number 4, who does the U.S. owe money to? The U.S. owes money to many different people and places. Some of the money is owed to other countries like China and Japan, who have bought a lot of U.S. bonds. These countries buy U.S. bonds because they see it as a safe place to invest their money. But a big part of the debt is also owed to American citizens, companies, and even parts of the U.S. government itself, like Social Security. For example, when you buy a savings bond, you are lending money to the government. So the debt is kind of spread out among many different people and places, both inside and outside the country. Number 5, how big is the U.S. national debt? The U.S. national debt is really, really big. It's so big that it's hard to imagine. As of now, it's over $30 trillion. That's a 30 with 12 zeros after it. To put it in perspective, if you stacked $1 bills, it would reach way past the moon and back several times. Another way to think about it is that every person in the U.S. would owe about $90,000 if the debt was divided equally. This enormous amount keeps growing because the government often spends more than it earns, and the interest on the debt adds up over time. Number 6, why does the debt keep growing? You might wonder why the debt keeps getting bigger. Well, one reason is that the government keeps needing to borrow more money to pay for things. For example, during a recession, the government might spend more on programs to help people who lose their jobs or need extra support. Another reason is that the interest on the debt adds up, kind of like when you borrow money and have to pay back a little extra. And sometimes things happen that cost a lot of money, like wars or big economic crises. These unexpected costs can make the debt grow even faster. Number 7, what happens if the U.S. pays off its debt? If the U.S. suddenly paid off all its debt, it would be a huge deal. It would mean the government wouldn't owe anyone any money, but paying off all that debt at once would be really tough. The government would need to collect a lot more money in taxes or cut a lot of spending, which could affect many services people rely on. It's a bit like paying off a huge credit card bill all at once. It would take a lot of effort and sacrifice. If the government tried to pay off the debt too quickly, it could lead to higher taxes and less money for important programs like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Number 8, why can't the U.S. just print more money? You might think, why doesn't the government just print more money to pay off the debt? Well, if the government prints too much money, it can cause something called inflation. Inflation means that prices go up, and the money in your pocket doesn't buy as much as it used to. This happens because when there is more money available, people and businesses can charge more for goods and services. So, while printing more money sounds like an easy solution, it would actually make things more expensive and harder for everyone. Too much inflation can be very harmful to the economy and people's savings. Number 9. What are the risks of high national debt? Having a high national debt can be risky. If the debt gets too big, people and countries who lend money to the U.S. might worry that they won't get their money back. This could make them less willing to lend more money or could lead to higher interest rates. Higher interest rates mean the government has to pay even more money just to borrow money, which makes the debt grow even faster. Additionally, a high debt level can limit the government's ability to respond to emergencies and invest in future projects, which could hurt the economy in the long run. Number 10. Can the U.S. ever pay back its debt? Will the U.S. ever be able to pay back all its debt? Well, it's complicated. Most economists think that completely paying off the debt isn't likely to happen anytime soon. Instead, the goal is to manage the debt and make sure it's not growing too fast. This means finding a balance between borrowing money and paying it back over time. By keeping the economy strong and making smart financial decisions, the government can keep the debt under control. It's a bit like managing a mortgage. As long as you can make the payments and keep your finances healthy, having some debt is manageable. Number 11. How does the U.S. manage its debt? The U.S. manages its debt by making sure it can keep borrowing money at reasonable interest rates and by trying to keep the economy strong. A strong economy means more people have jobs, businesses are doing well, and the government collects more taxes. All of this helps keep the debt under control and makes it easier to pay back what is owed. The government also tries to make smart decisions about when to borrow money and how much to spend, just like how a family might budget their money to make sure they can pay their bills and save for the future. Number 12. What are some solutions? There are a few ways to try and reduce the national debt. One way is to increase taxes, so the government has more money to pay off the debt. Another way is to cut spending, which means the government spends less money on things. Both of these solutions can be tough because they can affect people's lives and the economy. For example, higher taxes can mean less money for families to spend on things they need, and cutting spending can mean fewer services like education and healthcare. It's all about finding the right balance to make sure the debt doesn't get out of control. Number 13. How does this affect you? You might wonder, why should I care about the national debt? Well, even though it seems like a big, faraway problem, it can affect everyone. High debt can lead to higher taxes or fewer services from the government, like schools or roads. It can also affect the economy, which can impact jobs and prices for things you buy. For example, if the government has to spend more money on interest payments, it might have less money to invest in things like new technology or infrastructure that can create jobs and help the economy grow. So it's important for everyone to understand and care about it. Number 14. Historical context. Let's take a quick look at the history of the U.S. national debt. Did you know that the U.S. has had debt since the very beginning? After the American Revolution, the new government borrowed money to pay for the war. Over the years, the debt has gone up and down depending on what was happening in the country and the world. For example, the debt went up a lot during World War II because the government needed money to fight the war. It also increased during the Great Recession of 2008, when the government spent a lot to help the economy recover. Understanding this history helps us see that debt has been a part of the country's finances for a long time. Number 15. Comparing with other countries. You might be curious about how the U.S. debt compares to other countries' debts. Well, many countries around the world also have national debts. Some countries have more debt than the U.S. when you compare it to the size of their economies, while others have less. For example, Japan has a very high national debt compared to its economy, while countries like Norway have very low debt. This comparison helps us understand that national debt is a common issue, and each country handles it differently based on its unique situation. Some countries can manage their debt better due to their economic policies, natural resources, or smaller populations. Thanks for sticking with us as we explored the ins and outs of the U.S. national debt. We hope you learned something new and now have a better understanding of this important topic. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great videos. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, keep learning and stay curious.